The Dominion had fought wars for centuries, but never against something as annoyingly persistent as humans. They had conquered thousands of worlds, wiped out species that stood in their way, and imposed their rule across the galaxy with brutal efficiency. Yet, here they were celebrating what should have been an easy victory, only for the air to feel wrong. On the barren battlefield of Epsilon Eridani IV, the Zelvari warlords stood victorious. Smoke curled from the charred remains of human war machines, their once mighty tanks, now twisted husks of metal. The last stronghold of Earth's military presence had been razed. The few surviving soldiers had been executed. It was done. The war was over. The humans were extinct. At least, that's what the Dominion believed. Commander Zorvac of the Zelvari Dominion, a towering reptilian with gleaming obsidian scales, surveyed the wreckage with satisfaction. He turned to his adjutant, a lanky alien with too many eyes and an unfortunate habit of blinking them independently. "Take note, Vrel," Zorvac said. "This is how you exterminate an infestation. No loose ends. No survivors." Vrel dutifully tapped on his datapad, recording the supposed extinction of humanity. That was when a tiny, insignificant beep sounded from his wrist communicator. A garbled human transmission crackled through. Rule number 1. Vrel glanced around. "Sir, Zorvac waved a dismissive claw. "Ignore it. Probably just residual noise from their broken systems. The humans are gone." Vrel frowned. Something in his gut, or at least the alien equivalent of one, felt uneasy. Several kilometers beneath their feet, in a reinforced underground bunker lined with scavenged enemy tech, Lieutenant Commander Jack Callahan watched the Dominion forces through a cracked but still functional tactical visor. His team of 6 sat around him, looking anything but defeated. They were dirty, battered, and running on less sleep than a caffeine-addicted raccoon, but none of them seemed particularly concerned. "Well," Callahan muttered, scratching at the stubble on his chin, that went about as well as expected. Sergeant Tom Ox O'Reilly, built like a brick wall with the personality of a sledgehammer, grinned. "If by well, you mean they killed everyone but forgot to check if the crazy humans with explosives were still breathing, then yes, sure." Corporal Diaz smirked, loading a fresh magazine into her rifle. Classic Zelvari. Always assume the war's over the second they plant their ugly flag. Callahan exhaled slowly, tapping his earpiece. "That's their mistake." He activated the comms. You forgot rule number 1. The Zelvari had no idea what rule number 1 was, but they were about to find out. Above ground, the celebration was in full swing. Dominion troops, ever the arrogant victors, had begun their post-slaughter rituals, burning human banners, toppling statues, and making grand speeches about how superior their empire was. Standard villainous monologuing. Then the lights went out. The massive energy grids, designed to power Dominion fortifications, shorted out in a brilliant cascade of blue sparks. Shields flickered and failed. Communication lines erupted in static. Panic rippled through the Zelvari ranks. Zorvac spun on his heel. "What is happening?" Vrel tapped frantically at his datapad. "Massive EMP surge, sir. It's coming from inside the base." Before Zorvac could process this revelation, the first explosion tore through the compound. Not a wide, devastating blast, no, that would have been too merciful. This was precise, controlled, methodical. A chain reaction of detonations collapsed strategic choke points, cutting off exits and herding Dominion forces into kill zones. Then the shooting started. From the shadows, from the ruins, from places no one expected, humanity struck back. Callahan's team moved like ghosts, silent, lethal, and just pissed off enough to make it personal. Ox barreled through enemy lines, wielding a shotgun that sounded like the end of the world. Diaz picked off high-ranking officers with sniper shots, so clean they could have been framed in an art museum. The others worked in tandem, using their knowledge of terrain, enemy weaknesses, and, most importantly, their complete disregard for playing fair. Zorvac watched in stunned disbelief as his forces, superior in numbers, technology, and sheer arrogance, crumbled in the face of an enemy they had already declared dead. "This is impossible," he growled, retreating toward his command post. They were annihilated. Vrel, who had given up on blinking altogether, stammered, I believe, sir, that we may have misunderstood the definition of annihilated. Callahan's voice echoed over the open comms, deliberately patched into Dominion frequencies. See, the thing about humans? Zorvak's eyes darted around. The voice was everywhere and nowhere. Asterisk, you can kill a soldier. You can bomb a city. You can even try wiping out an entire species. But the moment you start celebrating, asterisk, a knife flashed in the dark. A Dominion officer gurgled, collapsing before he could scream. Asterisk, that's when you lose. Asterisk, the Zelvari warlord snarled, drawing his plasma blade. Show yourself, human coward. A shadow moved behind him. A tap on his shoulder. Zorvak whirled around, too slow. Callahan grinned as he drove his combat knife deep into the warlord's armor, right between the plates. Asterisk, rule number 1, buddy. Asterisk. Zorvak gasped, staggering forward as his strength left him. His eyes flickered toward Vrel, who stood frozen, hands shaking. Callahan winked. Never assume a SEAL is dead unless you've checked the body. As Zorvak collapsed, the last thing he heard was the distant echo of human laughter. The battle wasn't just won. It had never been lost in the first place. Vrel had always considered himself a survivor. He wasn't a warrior like Zorvak, nor did he possess the brute strength of the Dominion's elite soldiers. No, his skill set lay in avoiding messy situations. Unfortunately, tonight was shaping up to be the messiest night of his life. The humans weren't just alive, they were thriving. The so-called remnants of Earth's military had transformed into an invisible nightmare, striking from the shadows, vanishing before retaliation could even begin. Zelvari soldiers, armed with state-of-the-art targeting systems and energy weapons, found themselves outmaneuvered by an enemy using, of all things, knives, tripwires, and explosives that looked suspiciously like repurposed kitchen appliances. Vrel ducked as another explosion rocked the compound. The lights flickered again. His remaining troops were panicking, firing wildly at every shadow, at every unexpected noise. They were fighting ghosts. A soldier screamed behind him, cut off mid-cry. Vrel spun just in time to see a body crumple to the ground. Another officer, throat slit, his blood seeping into the dust. Something moved in the corner of his vision, and he raised his plasma rifle, only to find nothing there. He activated his communicator. All remaining units, form a defensive line. Do not engage unless you have confirmed visual contact. A voice interrupted him. Smooth, amused, entirely too confident. Oh no, please. Keep engaging. It's hilarious. Vrel's blood ran cold. Human? That's one of my nicknames. Callahan's voice dripped with mockery. I also go by Sir, Commander, and on a really good day, oh God, please don't kill me. Vrel backed toward the last functioning outpost, pulse hammering. You think this changes anything? The Dominion will send reinforcements. You cannot win. Win? Callahan chuckled. Buddy, I'm not trying to win. A long pause. Then, the lights cut out entirely. I'm just trying to make sure you lose. The next few minutes were a masterclass in psychological warfare. Vrel's soldiers, already rattled, devolved into a barely organized mob. The humans didn't engage in full-scale combat. They picked apart the Dominion forces like wolves tearing into a wounded beast. A single rifle shot from the dark. A silent knife between armor plates. Sudden, inexplicable bursts of fire where Dominion ammo caches used to be. One Zelvari officer, shaking from nerves, turned on his night vision scanner. His scream lasted half a second before he was yanked into the void. By the time the Zelvari forces regrouped, what little of them remained, Vrel knew they had already lost. The compound was in ruins. The Dominion's finest warriors, trained in planetary conquest and mechanized assault, had been undone by sheer, relentless unpredictability. Then, the final blow came. Vrel's communicator crackled. This is the Dominion flagship, VA Rash, ground forces. Report status. He snatched his device. A lifeline. This is Adjutant Vrel. We need immediate evac. We have. Silence. Asterisk, VA Rash asterisk? Come in. Silence. Then static. And then Callahan's voice. Hey there, lizard boy. You might want to find a new ride. Vrel looked up. In the night sky, the Dominion flagship, his salvation, his one remaining hope, lit up like a second sun. A chain reaction of detonations cascaded through its hull. It listed to one side, splitting apart in a slow, agonizing descent before it vanished in a final, brilliant explosion. He could only gape. But how? Turns out, your security sucks, Callahan said cheerfully. We slipped a couple of transmitters onto your guys earlier. Figured once they beamed back up, we could hitch a ride. Took about 20 minutes to override the reactor controls. Honestly, we were hoping it'd be harder. Vrel swallowed hard. He was alone. The Dominion forces were either dead or scattered. Their fleet, their reinforcements gone. He was standing in the wreckage of what should have been the Zelvari's greatest victory. Callahan stepped into view then, flanked by his remaining team. Their armor was battered, their weapons almost empty, but they stood with the ease of men who had already won. Vrel took a slow step back. Go ahead. Callahan gestured at the wasteland surrounding them. Run. Tell the Dominion what happened here. Tell them that if they ever try this again, we won't just stop at one fleet. Vrel hesitated only a moment before bolting into the night. Callahan sighed. Think he'll deliver the message? Ox cracked his knuckles. Oh yeah, and if he doesn't, we can always visit. Diaz holstered her rifle. Bet you 50 credits he cries when he tells his superiors. Callahan grinned. I don't take sucker bets. The war wasn't over. But this battle? This one was theirs. Vrel had never run so fast in his life. His legs ached, his lungs burned, and his brain was screaming at him in ways no self-respecting Zelvari intellect should have to endure. He had survived planetary invasions, bureaucratic meetings, and a particularly unfortunate misunderstanding involving an ambassador's daughter, but nothing compared to being hunted by humans. The Dominion would never believe him. He barely believed it himself. An entire occupation force, reduced to smoldering wreckage. The Zelvari flagship, obliterated. The celebrated conquest of humanity, exposed for the sham it was. Vrel could already picture the War Council's reaction. Some would rage, others would scoff, and one particularly smug general would probably say something insufferable about acceptable losses. They had no idea. A distant explosion rumbled behind him, a final punctuation mark on the absolute disaster of his existence. Vrel risked a glance back. No pursuit, no gunfire, just silence. And that was somehow worse. The humans hadn't chased him. They had let him go. That meant they were already planning something worse. Deep underground, Callahan leaned back against a makeshift console, rubbing at the fresh cut along his jaw. Well, that was fun. Ox tossed a spent magazine onto the pile of discarded gear. Not sure fun is the word I'd use. More like an unhinged death gauntlet with no brakes. Diaz snorted. Oh, come on. I'd give it a solid 8 out of 10. Knocked off 2 points for the part where we almost got vaporized. The rest of the team chuckled, the tension easing just enough for the exhaustion to set in. They were alive. Miraculously, ridiculously alive. And despite everything, humanity still had a fighting chance. Callahan turned to the last working screen in the bunker, where a shaky but functional map displayed Dominion fleet movements. Vrel wasn't wrong about reinforcements. They would come. But now, they wouldn't be arriving to celebrate. They'd be arriving to understand how a handful of dead humans had wiped out an invasion force. Ox cracked his knuckles. So, what's the plan, boss? Callahan exhaled, tilting his head as if listening to some unspoken challenge from the universe. Well, the way I see it, we've already proven one thing. Diaz arched a brow. That we're completely insane? That too, Callahan admitted. But mainly, we just gave the Dominion something they've never had before. Silence stretched as the team exchanged glances. Finally, Ox huffed. And what's that? Callahan grinned. A reason to be afraid. The Dominion's response was predictably swift. Within 48 hours, 3 more warships entered the system, scanning for survivors, wreckage, anything to explain what had happened. They found ruins. They found burnt-out bunkers and empty shell casings. They found the shredded remains of their own occupation force. They found no humans. They found something else instead. At the center of the battlefield, amidst the charred remains of Zelvari banners and discarded weapons, one object remained untouched, a simple metal placard driven into the dirt. It bore a single message, written in the Dominion's own language. Rule number 1. Never assume a SEAL is dead unless you've checked the body. The war wasn't over. Not by a long shot, but for the first time in Dominion history, the war wasn't going the way they expected.